Good morning, everybody. So today's session is going to be covering the elements of unlocking your recruitment advertising and how to get the most from it with limited budget, which we've seen already, and also looking at employer branding and how you can sort of weave that through the candidate experience, sort of from careers site, adverts, onboarding, and throughout the sort of advertising experience as well. So quick introductions. I'll let Anna introduce herself in a moment. But my name is Richard Youngman. I am the head of client relations at networx, and my passion and focus for the last 18 years has been working with clients across all sectors within networx to look at their recruitment strategy, help them to benefit the most from their advertising approaches, and also to build them recruitment processes or consult with them on their recruitment processes to effectively harness the power of technology as well. So both in terms of attracting candidates and also then how we then manage those candidates through systems. And yeah, that's been my focus. And obviously Anna at Grand Union is one of our clients. So I'll let Anna introduce herself now.
Hi guys, so I'm Anna, I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager at Grand Union Housing Group. I've been there for 5 years now, and we are a very low cost operator, and Irish stroke networks have been great in kind of trying to support us to deliver our attraction strategy and also our employer branding. So my passion, you know, the business's passion is to make sure that we've got low budget, but we get the best results, we attract the right candidates, give the best service to our candidates and our internal stakeholders, and making sure that our on branding is on point and kind of sorting out the foundations. So starting from basics and kind of building our way up.
Anna. Okay, so not an exhaustive list by any means, but just to give you a little bit of an insight into some of the clients that we work with. And we deal with clients of all sizes and shapes and all industries. So our smallest client has just over 30 employees. It's a small charity that we work with, and obviously, like you can see here, we work with some of the larger brands as well. So very scalable the way that we work with our clients, but the primary focus is always to reduce cost, improve the quality of candidates, and obviously improve the candidate experience for both candidates throughout the process, but also on the client side, the recruiting team, hiring managers, and the HR team also. So you may or may not recognise the networx brand, but we work more as a silent partner in partnership, obviously, with the clients that you can see here. So what do Irish networx do? So there's a few elements to our operating model. So some clients just use us for our recruitment and onboarding technology, which is built in-house, and we build it all to the brand. You might know that better as an ATS. Some clients already have an ATS, so we work with them on recruitment advertising strategy or social media recruitment. And we also have a fixed fee managed recruitment process, which is sort of incorporating advertising, search, sifting of candidates, drafting adverts, that kind of thing. And that is a fixed fee model. So whether it's a chief exec, trades, HR, finance, IT, all sorts of roles, you know, marketing, it's always going to be the same cost of actually below £1,000 to recruit per position. So we've been really successful across all industries to reduce cost base, and we operate our managed service on a 94% first time fill rate. So we're really proud to uphold that success level. But yeah, some clients will use all of these elements. Some clients might just use one or two, but we don't ever work on a contract exclusivity approach. It's more sort of, we just work with companies as and when they need us. So it's quite a refreshing approach that we work to. So hopefully that gives you some insight into sort of how we support clients and really where our experience has come from over the last sort of 18 to 20 years. So I think we're going to flash up a quick poll here just to understand more about everyone that's on this session and the priorities for you across 2024. So you can pick multiple options here. So it was, which of the following objectives are a priority for 2024? So achieving greater advertising exposure of your jobs, reducing the use of agencies through more direct sourcing methods, improving the diversity of your candidate pools, and enhancing your employer profile. So I'll just give a few more seconds on this for everybody to get their vote in. Good time of the year to be thinking about your priorities within recruitment. Sets the scene for the next 12 months. So let's just see, last few votes. Okay, so we'll just draw that to a close now. Okay, so quite an even split here. So achieving greater advertising. So it looks like the reduction of agencies and enhancing the employer profile are the main drivers here, closely followed by diversity and advertising exposure. So this is great news because this is what we're talking about today. So without further ado, we shall make a start. Okay, so I thought it might be useful just to look at the different market segments. So this is something when we first engage with a client, we'll normally do sort of a recruitment review, which is a sort of short 20-30 minute session just to look at the way that they target candidates, whether that's advertising agencies, social media, things like that. So we split the market really into 3 defined segments here. So essentially the 5 to 15% is the smallest part of the workforce, which you would deem to be active job seekers. So these are the people who are going home or on the lunch breaks, looking at jobs on job boards. They're speaking to agencies, perhaps multiple agencies, engaging with them to look for a new job. So they are actively seeking new work. And typically these are going to be the people that spend a lot of time on the job boards. So interestingly, the job boards are only reaching the active job seekers here, because if you weren't on the job board, you wouldn't see that job. So that kind of bleeds into the other areas here, where semi-active job seekers might be people that are sort of playing with the idea of looking for a new job. They might be looking at on a job board or 2 at the weekend. They perhaps put some feelers out with some agencies, but if the right opportunity came around, they might explore that opportunity. And finally, the biggest market segment here is the passive candidates, which I think are often the forgotten candidate pool, really, because they are the candidates that aren't really even looking for work yet. So you could argue it's a really good pool to be working to, but typically these are the candidates that are found by recruitment agencies. They're obviously found through doing LinkedIn recruiter searches or database searches on the job boards, or obviously a growing trend now is social media. So when we're looking at these market segments, it's interesting to understand where clients are putting their budgets, what they are doing at the moment. Typically, when we first meet with clients, they've got all their eggs in 1 or 2 baskets. They've either given all their budget to one job board. So let's say that we're advertised on everything on Total Jobs or Indeed. And if we don't fill it, we go to agency. So we sort of look at how we can make that budget stretch a bit wider, get more exposure, and start to target these semi-active and the passive candidates, because ultimately that's going to get you the best candidate pool. It's going to make sure that you're engaging with people across the whole market. And obviously the key driver from that poll was reducing agency spend. This is where we start to emulate that agency exposure and make sure we get the best quality of candidates. So how do you ensure you stand out from the crowd? So the first thing that we would think about when we're looking at sort of how to target a vacancy is, what is the actual job that you're recruiting for? Is it a graduate? Is it an apprenticeship? Is it casual staff? Is it management roles? Is it exec? It might be a niche specialist or technical role. Is it finance? Is it HR? Is it IT? Because that ultimately should dictate how you then target that role. Often when we meet with clients initially, they'll sort of say, everything goes on this job board and we always go to the same job boards. That's our approach. Sometimes it might be we put it on Indeed, we've all got a LinkedIn corporate account, we post it on there. And the thought process with that is, if you're just using those two platforms, what about all of the other platforms? What about Reed? What about job sites, CV Live, all these different sites? And there will obviously be candidate preferences as well about different platforms, but it's understanding where those candidates are going to be looking, how we can sort of get the advert in front of those candidates, and ensuring that when you do look at a targeting strategy for that particular role, you align that strategy to the actual job itself, rather than we just always go to the same job boards kind of thing. So looking at where we can find the candidates, I think we've already talked about, obviously job board is the active candidates, LinkedIn and social media could be deemed as passive candidate audiences. And then obviously clients will have their own CV databases as well that they could utilize. And the other thing to think about as well is, what are these people looking for? So sometimes generationally, the motivations for moving work would be aligned to benefits. Sometimes it's obviously the pay and the compensation package. Others, it might be career development, but we've seen an increase, as I'm sure everyone on this session has, in working patterns, working arrangements, hybrid working, remote working. So how can we exploit those avenues on the adverts and sort of sell that as a, not as a perk, but as a, you know, this is a benefit of working for this organization. So to then establish a clear attraction strategy, it then sort of forms into the actual advert itself. So we've had to think about different job boards and social media and all those elements. But when we're looking at actually creating the advert, one thing that we work quite heavily with clients on is creating optimized job adverts to ensure that those adverts fully sell that opportunity, but also play to the algorithms of things like Google for jobs, the search engines such as Google and the various other search engines, and also the databases, aggregators and job boards. So a big thing is things like job titles, just ensuring that the job title is sort of market friendly. It's not sort of an internal job title. I'm sure everyone has those challenges internally where the manager sort of is quite wedded to a job title. One thing that we think is very important, and we see a huge uplift in applications, is ensuring that the job title is sort of external market friendly, so it can be searched easily. It's a known job title, and the internal job title might be sort of kept in brackets on the advert. Posting to targeted job boards. Now, this is a real important one. So one of the metrics that we track show that candidate behavior when they are actively looking for work, a candidate will typically look on 3 or 4 job boards, and they would normally be one that is local to the area. So depending on where you live, it might be things like the Manchester Evening News, the Leicester Mercury, Liverpool Echo. You've probably all got those kind of local job board links within your area. So ones that are local to the area was a popular one. A national job board, so ones that sort of front of mind of candidates, the ones that you see sort of in the tube stations, on the TV, you know, the radio, so things like Job Site, CV Library, Reed, Indeed. And then ones that would be niche to their industry, which I think often is a type of job board that isn't considered unless you're struggling. But something that we really try to formulate when we're looking at strategy is hitting all of these areas, because if a candidate is looking on 3 to 4 job boards when they're actively looking, we need to ensure that that advert is placed in all those areas, so we capture the best kind of engagement of candidate pools. So local ones, the national job boards, niche ones that are both niche to industry, so catering, hospitality, leisure, housing, charity. You've probably all got a retail's another one. You've probably all got a job board that is aligned to your sector, but then there'll be also job boards that are niche to the disciplines of a role. So HR, finance, IT, you know, they've all got those job boards that are linked to the institutions and the sector itself. So it's really important to ensure that adverts are in all of those places. And when we're working with a client, let's say on a HR role or a recruitment role, we'll make sure it's on all the relevant platforms there, as well as the national ones, as well as the local ones. And obviously a growing importance here is diversity platforms as well. So whether you look to make arrangements with all these job boards independently, or you work with a supplier similar to ourselves, where we can bring the buying power to you as an organisation and pass on those discounts. I think it's really important to ensure that you've got exposure across all of those types of job boards. Third point down is looking to post to talent databases. So for those that have an ATS, I'm sure you've all got a talent database, but to ensure that you're communicating with that talent database, to ensure they're kept up to date of opportunities. If you've got recruitment drives, you're communicating those to the candidate pools and sort of utilising that talent pool much more effectively. We've touched on Indeed already. It's one of many job aggregators, as you probably all know. Things like Glassdoor, Edzuna, all of those platforms are great for further reach. And then obviously the role of a recruiter or working with a recruitment partner, someone like ourselves, search selection is key. So those passive candidate pools and the semi-active candidate pools that we looked at, these are going to be the types of candidate pools that are only found through database searching. So they might be job board databases. We personally subscribe to 11 job board databases, so we search all of them for our clients. And obviously we have a LinkedIn recruiter search. Some clients have LinkedIn recruiter themselves. It's a really important tool to ensure you can target the same kind of candidates as an agency would. And the final point, which is a growing area, is the social media advertising. So this is sponsored advertising across LinkedIn, if it's maybe a professional or a technical or sort of senior role. If it's more of an entry-level role, or if it's something like contact center, apprenticeships, graduates, things like that, we find Facebook and Instagram works a little bit better there. So there's some really nice tools in those platforms now where you can actually pick locations. So you could pick a postcode and then you pick a proximity from that postcode to engage people within that vicinity with your adverts. Again, these are people that perhaps haven't made their way to a job board just yet, but it's also going to be engaging people's husbands, people's wives, people's daughters, people's sisters. You know, it creates that buzz that you're recruiting. So one feeds into the other, really. So it's really important to be looking at all of these components to ensure that your organisation, from an employer brand and from a marketing of recruitment, has omnipresence. So wherever a candidate may wish to look, search or view a new opportunity, you have that exposure. Right, let's look at a working example here. So we're moving now into the advert style and format. So I'm sure Anna won't mind me saying, but this is kind of where we began with Grand Union Housing Group. So some of you may sort of be familiar with this kind of look and feel of an advert. Just got a few images at the top, and it's a very heavily text-driven advert. No real exciting content, quite flat. You know, some recruitment systems still operate in this way. I'd really sort of ask you to look at the advert, because this is something that really does affect candidates' applications. We track the metrics on this, and when a candidate actually hits an advert, typically it takes around 8 seconds for them to make a decision of whether they're going to apply or not. It's not a long amount of time, 8 seconds, but I think with the growing trend of things being instant, 1 click, 2 clicks, things like on DPD, Amazon being just very, very quick processes, that has sort of spread into recruitment and the advert. So it's really important to sort of look at the content here. So there's not much content. It's a very typical granular advert, which pretty much looks like a lift and shift from the job description and person specification. So again, it's not wrong, but it's just not too exciting for the candidate. A little bit of a death by bullet points halfway down there as well. So that's where we started. This is the actual real advert from before, when we started with this process. So as you can see there, it's a simple advert, but there's not too much going on in there. At this point, Grand Union Housing Group had a dropout of 66%. Okay, that's quite high, and it's fairly typical of quite mundane flat adverts. Fast forward, we now have the same advert live, and it's doing very, very well, much, much better. The dropout rate of this particular advert is only 12%. You're always going to have an element of dropout because people are nosy, you'll have internal people looking at adverts and things like that. But what we've moved them from is this flat granular advert here, which is very heavily text driven, to what we call a content rich advert. So we've got map integration, which can be turned on and or off depending if it's remote or not. You've got the ability to obviously apply through Google, through LinkedIn or Facebook, or an email address. Key information is still here, so the job title, the salary, the location. We've got hotkeys at the top, which can take you to different parts of the advert really quickly. So if you click values, it brings you straight down to some visual indication of values. They have an image carousel in here, which automatically moves. So it's just bringing to life what the organization is like to work for, really selling the opportunity. And you've got everything within this screen to make a decision that, yes, I'm going to apply. They don't have to go back to the careers page. They don't have to open documents. We have attached a couple of documents here just for reference, but they don't necessarily have to open those. We have video integration, which can automatically start playing. That's really key, really nice. They could be just a generic corporate recruitment video, or you could start to look at having videos that would be based on that particular role. Then going back to the top, we have information about the vacancy, what they'll be doing, what Grand Union are looking for, and really key, going back to the start, is the perks for working for Grand Union. And I wouldn't ever think that, you know, I don't think many people are going to be bothered about that. You'll be surprised what people are really keen to see when it comes to perks and benefits. So I would always list whatever you can there, and information about obviously applying, and a bit of a blurb about the company. So I'll kind of hand over to Anna, and sort of, what's your thoughts, Hannah, in terms of the move here from this to this?
A very big difference. So it's quite shocking, guys. Like 66% really shocked me. We weren't getting the right candidates coming in. It was a lot of headhunting, and at the time when we made the change, it was only myself in the team. We've only now, the last couple of months, have a recruitment assistant. So it's just working on the basics. We're a low cost operator. We don't have loads of money, but it's about making great business cases. So networx, Iris Networx, they are specialist recruiters, which is great. They know what they're talking about. We went there, we told them our challenges. We're not getting the right people, they're not the right audience, and actually it's detrimental to the business, because my job is not to use recruitment agencies, so we need to get that direct hire. So we had to start from basics, and that was making sure the job description right. So no full-page job description. We had to influence the business. We had to do a job description on a page, and then it's like Richard said, the title. You really need to make sure the title is what the job description says. So once we kind of established all of that, it was about, okay, let's look at the branding, and then Richard and his team had a bit of a project management. We looked at our career site, we looked at the onboarding portal, we looked at, you know, what goes out there on social media, because you don't want everything to be bitty, you don't want different branding, you want to make sure it's the same. The team had some specialist people. We had a really great account manager, and she really supported us to make sure, you know, we were going out there. If there was any headhunting, she would let us know that she's doing them. If there were niche job boards, she would let us know what the niche job boards. Yes, there is a little bit of a cost, but if you want to get the right people and attract the right people, which is also brand awareness on those job boards, you start to build also a passive candidate pool. So with this role now, we normally get one great person if we're lucky. However, you know, we just phone screened, I think, 56 applicants for a property manager, which is like a surveyor role, which is really, really hard to find. We shortlisted telephone interview, which we've got 11 people in telephone interview. So that's a massive difference to where we're lucky to scrape 1 or 2 candidates. So that's kind of the difference it's made, and we're attracting the right audiences. So the other advert, if you looked at it, it's more kind of a social care advert. If you I suppose we kind of attract a lot of people from health care providers or social care, and that's not what we wanted. So it's made a real difference. So we've only got 12%, you know, dropout rate. So still a bit of work we need to do, but actually fantastic attraction, and some really good candidates.
So thanks for those insights, Anna. If we move on to the next slide. So just doing a bit of a deeper dive on that advert now. So some key takeaways from looking at this advert design and how you actually format your advert. So some of the metrics that we've tracked and sort of monitored what gains the best results. So job title, length of job title should aim to get sort of below 30 characters. Keep it as concise as possible. We tend to see a lot of clients mentioning things like the particular project they'll be working on rather than the actual job itself, or they'll have lots and lots of information about benefits in the title, things like that. So try and keep that job title short, snappy, and concise. One point that was a real sort of tricky one, shall we say, through the pandemic and post-pandemic was using specific locations. Frustratingly, a lot of the search engines and the algorithms of the job boards and things like Google don't recognize if you don't put a location in. Some of them are starting to learn that behavior now through machine learning, but we always find we gain a better response by using a location. 10 times more applications than those that don't use a location. So try and again keep that location to a single, or at worst sort of a couple of locations. It's when sort of clients will sort of start to try and put things like within any locations across our group. Unfortunately, a lot of the sort of algorithms of the things like Indeed and the search engines don't know how to sort of communicate that. They don't know what your locations are across the group. So try and lose a specific location. If you don't have a specific location and it's operating across a few different areas, perhaps maybe like in the East Midlands or Greater Manchester, try and pinpoint maybe a central point within the locations that role is going to be working across. That would be the advice there. Short description of the role, so try and keep that around 500 words. This can increase application numbers by around 12%. A key element to mention here is branding. So that goes towards branding of the advert, but also branding across job boards. So that's something that you want to try and weave through to ensure that your brand gains prominence, and also that you are always pushing that employer brand. Some of the clients when we first start working with them, where they have typically always used recruitment agencies for a particular part of the business, it's about creating that brand awareness and making sure, like we've said earlier, around job boards, local, national, niche, social media, to really start to communicate that brand. Because if you've been using agencies, say for finance, for years and years and years within a particular part of the business, then those candidate pools perhaps won't be aware from exposure across the advertising platforms that you are always recruiting. So the branding is really important. Salary, again, we have clients that can't publish salaries. There probably might be some people on this session that have that kind of policy. Believe it or not, 4 or 5 out of 5 job seekers are less likely to apply for a job if it does not state the salary. So we'd always encourage clients to either use the salary, or at worst, something like a salary range, or up to, dependent on skills, something like that. You've still got that flex if you need to, or using sort of terminology like that does help. Again, that is sort of going back to the way that the location indexes the jobs on the search engines and job boards. Videos we've talked about, we saw it on Anna's advert just then, that can really bring the advert to life. And we also encourage clients to put videos into things like onboarding as well, because that can help really sort of engage that candidate. And we see an increase around 34% when a job post does include a video. So again, a really, really nice way of communicating to candidates. And I think I've touched on this already, but candidates are much more likely to apply when you have listed your benefits there and what you offer as an organisation. Anna did mention this just now, so I'll cover this in a little bit more detail here. So when it comes to employer brand, sometimes we'll see that organisations might have a specific type of branding on their careers page, and then their ATS looks completely different, or just has a logo and it's not sort of in tune with the corporate website, and then there may or may not be a onboarding process that's branded, and maybe when they go to social media it's different branding as well. So the key point here is to ensure a uniform and consistent employer brand throughout the process. So from when that candidate first engages with you, maybe on a job board or on a social media platform. So that this here is a social media sponsored campaign we've done for Grand Union's trades recruitment. That then obviously weaves through to the advert, or obviously if a candidate came organically to the careers page, it's branded through there. And then they'll be having branded communication from the recruitment system. And that's again something that I'd encourage anyone who has an ATS to look at. Are your emails to candidates branded? Have they got logos? Are they colourful? Do they look inviting? Do they communicate your brand? And even things like text messages, if they're coming from your applicant tracking system, again, branding coming through from those text messages. The other point here, when the candidate has applied, there isn't a screenshot of it, unfortunately, but when the candidate has applied, it's really pivotal to have a candidate account portal. When we first engage with clients, some of their ATSs provide this, some don't. So it's really important to sort of go through this process as a candidate. So I'd encourage anyone that's sort of looking to improve their recruitment process to actually apply for a job in the same way as a candidate would, and just critique those processes to see if it is uniform, and also to see if that candidate account portal is there, and does it have access to previous applications, job alerts? Can they enhance their profile? Can they do things like referencing in there? You know, can they sort of update their profile and things like that? And then finally, the final point, which is the sort of bridge of the gap between the verbal offer and the first day, is a onboarding experience. So again, this process is really key to have that full branding throughout, and a very personalised touch and feel as well. So welcome to Grand Union Housing Group, Richard. We can't wait for you to start with us, as our merge is the title. Content there, maybe from the exec team. Obviously, all the new starter forms are going to be in there to do electronically on the phone. Things like document signing electronically, all that kind of good stuff that then feeds into the HR system. So as you can see, it's weaved that branding throughout. So if we're looking at employer branding, it needs to really sort of have all those touch points covered throughout the entire journey. So just to recap, key takeaways and points to consider. So we've talked about broadening your job board exposure, those different types of candidate pools, engaging with different audiences that perhaps you haven't engaged with before, local job boards, national job boards, niche job boards, whether it's to your sector or through the disciplines of your roles that you're recruiting, and diversity job boards as well. So try and sort of look to have that omnipresence across all of those platforms. Utilising social media to engage passive audiences. This has been a huge thing for a lot of our clients. Obviously, you're engaging with audience that may even not know that you ever recruit, or you're ever recruiting for those roles that you struggle to recruit. Creating a slick and easy to use process. So we've just looked at that just now. So from the careers page or the job board to the advert to the candidate account to the onboarding. Using content-rich adverts to really lift your employer brand. So really position you as an employer of choice, cementing that view for the candidate that you are the right decision for them to apply, creating that lasting memory as well, that they're going to remember you when you engage with them to arrange an interview. They're going to remember how good your process was, how polished it was, how slick that process was. They're more likely to remember that process if it is a nice engaging process. Communicating throughout with branded communication, whether it's via email or text, and obviously not forgetting the personal touch, making calls by phone as well, and providing that access to a branded candidate account portal for them to centralise all of their activity through that recruitment experience. And finally, welcoming them on that new starter experience. So you really want to finish that process with a red carpet experience. So they're going to come into your organisation thinking, this is really slick, it's been so easy, you know, I'm really excited to join. And you know, when we work so hard as recruiters to find the perfect candidate, it's a real shame if that onboarding experience sort of falls down and it's all paper-based or emails to candidates and asking them to print stuff off, and it's just a bit of a headache. If we can get that sort of bit sort of centralized, very slick and very modern and easy to complete and process, it obviously helps that new starter retention as well.